Okay, so in the world of software, let's be honest, the word monolith has kind of become a dirty word. It makes you think of old, clunky, outdated technology. But what if I told you that some of the biggest tech giants we use every day were built on this exact so-called dinosaur? Today, we're going to bust that myth wide open.
I mean, you hear the word and it just sounds heavy, right? In a time where everyone's talking about nimble microservices and everything being in the cloud, the monolith gets painted as this, this fossil from a totally different era of computing. And yet, here's the kicker. If this architecture is so flawed, why did companies like Amazon, Netflix, and even Uber all start their journey with one? This wasn't some mistake. Nope, it was a very deliberate strategic choice. And if you really want to understand modern software, you have to understand why they made that choice.
So to get to the bottom of this, we've got to go back to basics. What is a monolith, really? And why did it become the original go-to building block for so many legendary applications?
At its very core, a monolithic architecture is an application that's built as one single unified unit. You see it there, all the components are tightly integrated and they're all deployed together. Imagine building a car, but the engine, the wheels, the chassis, everything is forged as one single inseparable piece. If you need to fix a flat tire, well, the entire car has to go into the shop. And here's what that looks like under the hood. You've got the presentation layer, the user interface you actually click on. Then there's the business logic, the brains of the operation, and the part that talks to the database. All of it all lives together in one single code base, talks to one database, and gets launched all at once. It's its own self-contained universe.
Let's make it real with an e-commerce app. In a monolith, the code that handles your user profile is literally right next to the code that processes your payment, which is right next to the code that updates the inventory. They're not just neighbors. They're all roommates in the same house, sharing the same resources, all part of one big, tightly knit application.
Okay, so with all that tight integration, what's the upside? Well, it turns out that when you're just starting a project, this unified approach has some serious superpowers.
So what are these superpowers? Well, first off, simplicity. One code base is just way easier to wrap your head around, to build, and to get up and running. Pushing it live, that's a breeze. It's just one thing to deploy. And the performance is often amazing because all the different parts are talking to each other directly. No network lag. If you're a small team trying to launch a big idea fast, that speed is an absolute game changer. But what happens when that small, simple application starts to get big? Like, really big? Well, the very things that made the monolith so strong in the beginning can start to become its biggest weaknesses. Welcome to the growing pains.
All of a sudden, that simple codebase can feel like a tangled mess. Every new feature just adds another layer of complexity. You're pretty much stuck with the technology you chose at the very beginning. And even a tiny bug fix means you have to redeploy the entire application, which is always a bit of a nail-biter. And for large teams, it becomes a huge headache with everyone stepping on each other's toes. But the biggest problem of all is usually scaling. Just imagine it's Black Friday, and your product's search feature is getting hammered with traffic. To handle that load, you have to make copies of the entire application, including the parts that handle payments or user profiles, which are just sitting there, not busy at all. It's like having to buy a whole new car just because you need a bigger trunk. It's incredibly wasteful.
So, it's pretty clear this isn't about good versus bad architecture. It's all about context. The monolith is just a tool, and the real key is knowing when it's the right tool for the job. So, if it's not always the answer, what are the other options on the table?
First up, you have the modular monolith. Think of this as a more organized, more disciplined version of the classic. It's still a single deployment, but inside, the code is neatly divided into these independent modules. This brings a lot of sanity back as the app grows, and it's often a really smart first step if you're thinking about moving to something more distributed down the road.
And then there's the big one, microservices. These are the polar opposite. Instead of one giant application, you have dozens, maybe hundreds of tiny independent services that all talk to each other. This gives you incredible flexibility. You can scale each little piece separately. But, and this is a really big but, that flexibility comes with a massive price tag of complexity right from day one.
So, how do you decide? When should you reach for the monolith?
Well, if you're a startup, or you have a small team, or you're just building a minimum viable product, an MVP, to test an idea, a monolith is almost always your best friend. It's fast and simple. But if you know you're building a massive, complex system where different parts need to scale independently, yeah, it's probably time to look at other options. And that really brings us to the key takeaway. Monolithic architecture isn't bad or outdated. It is very often the absolute best starting point. The giants like Netflix and Amazon, they used it to launch fast, to learn, and to prove their ideas worked before they ever needed the complexity of something different. It's a strategy.
So, the next time you hear someone just dismiss the monolith out of hand, remember, it's not about choosing what's trendy or modern. It's about choosing what's appropriate. And for that next world-changing idea, that leaves us with a pretty important question. Is starting simple actually the most brilliant move of all?